Hi everyone, I'm Helen. I'm the founding editor of Writer's Edit, the online literary magazine. So what you're about to see is an interview I did with our Twitter account manager, Dave. In this interview, he talks about all the tips and tricks that you can employ to make your Twitter profile really stand out, as well as how you can use things like hashtags to reach the right readers and have an awesome time on Twitter. So enjoy. Today we're talking to Dave, who's our Twitter account manager. And Dave, if you want to tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Dave. I am 30 years old, originally from the UK. About 6 years ago, I decided to up and leave the UK and come to beautiful, sunny Sydney, Australia, where it's a lot warmer. It's a lot better lifestyle. I currently work in my full-time job. I currently work for the biggest e-commerce company in Australia, and sort of in my as a part-time job as well. I manage a Twitter account for Writer's Edit. So, and I guess that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw some questions at you, mainly about writing and writing for Twitter and writers on Twitter and kind of what works best in that kind of scope. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, what makes a great Twitter profile for a writer?
I think the first thing you've got to remember about your Twitter profile is that it's your personal brand. Just like a company has a brand, and you know how they're depicted in the media. A company has got to look after their reputation. You've got to do that yourself, and only you is sort of responsible for that. And there are definitely certain things that you can do with your profile to make sure that your personal brand and your personal reputation is upheld. First and foremost, you need to, as best as possible, use your real name or as close to your real name as possible, unless your name's like John Smith, in which case unlucky. Just try and make it John Smith 123 or whatever, because Bad Girl 217 it is not going to have the right sort of people aren't going to look on that username as sort of as being a respectful sort of writer. Try and use your real photograph, a real image of yourself. Try and make it sort of, at least semi-respectable. You don't want to be on a Saturday night, half cut, 17 schooners down sort of thing. What else? Your header image and your background color or background image is sort of optional. Some people leave it clear, just unaltered, as the default. I think really the best way to do your header image and your background is to have like just have a single color. Either do a single color or do like a really nice panoramic photo, like something that's nice to look at, like a beach or a sunset or a sunrise or something, a road going off into the distance or something like that. Something that like people will look at and they'll feel like a welcoming feeling when they get to your profile. Your bio, keep it direct, keep it short and basic. Make it, even like a lot of people just list what they're interested in, or list. The best thing to do is to list what you're going to tweet about. This is, I tweet about X, Y, Z. I tweet about writing. I tweet about self-help, entrepreneurship, and just gives people an insight into exactly what your tweets are going to be about and exactly what they can expect from following you. Always try and use a pinned tweet if you can, and generally writers tend to have, a link to their own, a link to their latest blog post. So every time, if you've got your own personal blog, which is sort of outside of the realms of this interview, I guess, but if you do have a personal blog, which you should, use the pinned tweet feature on your Twitter profile page to link to that. So that whenever someone comes to look at your profile page, they've always got the latest blog post, and if they really want to know more about you, they can click through to your blog.
So for those people who might not know, could you explain what a pinned tweet is quickly?
Yeah, sure. So the pinned tweet feature is it's a cool function on Twitter. Basically, like by default, as standard, your Twitter profile will just list from top to bottom. Will have like your most recent tweets at the top and going down at oldest, which of course means that if you publish a blog post on your blog and then you tweet about it on Twitter, which you obviously should, as you tweet more tweets later on, that post will move down your profile.
Right.
A pinned tweet gives you the opportunity to stick. It's like a sticky tweet, and it will stay at the top of your profile at all times, and all subsequent tweets will appear, below that one. And obviously, you can swap and change the pinned tweet at any time you like. So it's definitely a feature that you should definitely start using if you're not. And you can use it for other functions as well, like Writer's Edit use it for like whenever we do a giveaway, for example, we'll have like a giveaway that the pinned tweet will be like, hey, here's a link to our giveaway that we're running for this month or something like that. The only other thing really that you should definitely try and focus on, and I know this it might sound like it goes without saying for a writer, but like please, writers, make sure your spelling and grammar is like spot on because you're a writer. And again, this is a personal brand, and a personal brand for a writer should be that, you've got pretty good spelling and grammar. And like I said, I know it goes without saying, but I do come across writers' profiles where, the spelling and grammar, could be better.
Yeah.
And it's if people are on your profile page because they're interested in your ability, or maybe they want to hire you to do a job. And if someone's on your profile page and they're thinking about hiring you and they're sort of scoping you out and your spelling and grammar is all over the place, that's probably going to have negative repercussions on your job application. So it's definitely something you can think about.
Okay. All right. Well, you kind of touched on what you should be tweeting about. You mentioned links to your blog posts and things like that. If you want to tell us a little bit more in depth about what writers should be tweeting, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So I didn't want to go down like there's the obvious route. It's like, oh, you're a writer, you should probably be tweeting about writing. Yeah, thanks, Dave. Thanks for that brilliant advice. Industry news, that kind of thing. That's kind of really does go without saying. What you should be looking at, in my advice, would be the type of tweets and the type of posts that are really like popular and successful online, especially with social media and the advent of sites like BuzzFeed, for example, and sites that are tweets that are like helpful and resourceful. If you find a blog post on another site, or maybe your own site, that is helpful or resourceful, tweet about it. People love being told how to do things. People love being given links to like tutorials and tips and advice, how to write a novel and like how to write 2,000 words a day and things like that. Like people love that stuff. People lap that up. If you can make their if you can improve their ability, you should absolutely be posting this kind of stuff. And going back to what I said about BuzzFeed, what BuzzFeed does well, not so much the tips and resources. BuzzFeed just like interesting and surprising and to a certain extent shocking stuff that's like not necessarily controversial, but stuff that people are going to look at and go, whoa, that's like, I didn't know that. And I guess like just off the top of my head, like you might look at 17 authors who were published by the time they were 21 or something like that, and people are like, oh wow, that's actually a really interesting post. So yeah, resourceful tips, advice, and also like really awe-inspiring. You want to go for awe-inspiring posts. I'd also say image quotes do actually really well. Inspirational image quotes. You've probably all seen them. That people love inspirational image quotes. Things that make them feel good. Things that a writer can look at, and maybe they're suffering from writer's block on that day, or they're having a hard time getting through the third chapter of their novel, and they're not quite sure where to go for it, and they're kind of feeling a little bit sort of defeated and unsatisfied with their life at the moment. And they might look at the image quote that you tweeted and think, oh, actually, like, I can get through this. Like, you just have to keep going. And yeah, image quotes that are inspirational make people feel good about carrying on with what they're doing. It's like there's a lot of psychology and science behind it, but if you want to, there's a method of getting people to like click a link in a tweet. So you might put out a tweet that you want people to click the link and go to a blog post. But another type of tweet you might is purely like a tweet that you want people to retweet, you want people to share. And that is kind of like awareness of yourself. So you're not necessarily, the goal is not necessarily to get traffic to a website as such, it's just to improve awareness and improve your reputation. And the way to do that on social media is to put out something that will make other people look good to their friends if they share it. And it's, again, like image quotes, if you can mix an image quote with something that shows compassion, something that shows empathy, something that I want to see an image quote. And if I think, if I retweet that to my friends will see me as having compassion and having empathy. They'll think that I'm a good person. And so those are the kind of image quotes and tweets that are more likely to be retweeted. That goes across all social media. That goes across Facebook and Pinterest, etc., etc. It's about how you want people to perceive you, and that's what gets people to share and retweet posts and tweets.
Right. Okay. And from what you've kind of said there, kind of the underlying message what I'm taking from that is your tweets and your posts don't always have to be about you and be about your work. You can kind of spread the social media love around, can't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like it's recommended. In fact, most of what you tweet, I know it does sound a little bit counterintuitive, but most of what you tweet should be not about yourself. It's about social media is about community and contributing to that community, and you've got to contribute to that community in order to get back from that community. And especially on platforms like Twitter and Reddit as well, big time with these platforms is you need to be seen as someone who is always giving, and really, Rise Edit, from Rise Edit's perspective, we pretty much make sure that no more than a third of our tweets are like self-promotional. That's 2/3 of our tweets are like linking to our competitors and things like that. Which it does sound counterintuitive, but you need to make sure that people look at your profile and it's not all self-promotional. Because if they look at your and you're just trying to promote your own book and get yourself forward and make sales for yourself, and you're not really contributing, you're not really like aiding anyone else, people are less likely to follow you, and people are less likely to be interested in what you have to say, because they know that all you're doing is just tweeting about yourself, and nobody wants to follow anyone who tweets about themselves. So limit the amount of self-promotional tweets you put out, and promote other people, and try and build relationships and make connections with those people.
Right. Okay. So that kind of leads into quite nicely what I was going to ask next. You mentioned community and kind of interacting with people, and one of the ways in which you kind of find people on Twitter is through hashtags. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what kind of hashtags are the most common and kind of work best for writers when they're on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's a difficult one because I don't want to sit here and tell you, like, I can give you a handful of examples, but obviously, you're going to need to be what's it like? Dynamic. You need to change which hashtags you are using depending on which type of tweet you put out.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, like there are specific. So you don't just be like hashtag writing, because writing is like a massively broad niche. If you're tweeting, the tweet is, you know, about freelance writing, you might use hashtag freelance writing, or I think the best hashtag for that is like FWRT or something like that, freelance retweet group. If you're putting out tips, you might probably want to go with hashtag writing tips or hashtag write tip. And if you want to put out things that are like general writers' life issues, that all sort of writers can probably relate to, you want to go with writer's life, or I think there's a couple of others like in that group. Indie publishing, self-publishers. You've got the IARTG, which is like the Independent Authors Retweet Group, or you've got hashtag self-pub, hashtag self-publishing, things like that. You want to use like a combination of these hashtags, and I guess we can put sort of groups of hashtags in the show notes underneath.
Yeah.
The post site, so you don't sort of, if you're scrambling to write all of these down, don't worry about it. I'm sure Helen can stick it underneath the video on the site.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the correct answer to this question is actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you an insight into how to choose for yourself. So the tool I use, and it's a fantastic tool, it's called Hashtagify.me. Hashtagify.me. I guess we can put it in the show notes as well, so don't worry about writing it down. What this site does is it's like a hashtag search engine. You can go, and if you can go there and use the search box, and you can type in writing tips, press enter, and what it'll do is it'll give you like trends, how much that hashtag is being searched for on Twitter.
Yep.
And what sort of trends it follows recently. It also gives you related terms. So and it provides it in a really awesome table. Go to table mode, and you can see related terms to writing tips and how popular they are as well. You can even sort the table by how popular the hashtags are. So you might sit there and think, writing tips. You go to Hashtagify, type in writing tips, hit enter, and it'll come up with a bunch of others. And I often and frequently find a hashtag that might be better than writing tips, that is more popular, it's searched more, and therefore instead of using writing tips, you probably want to use this hashtag instead, because then your tweet is probably going to get more impressions because more people are searching for the hashtag that you use.
Right.
So yeah, definitely use Hashtagify. It's an awesome tool, and it's free, and you don't even have to sign up. So what's not to love?
Okay. So now we've covered hashtags, what makes your profile look good, what we should be tweeting about. The next thing I wanted to talk about just a little bit was images, and how we can use images on Twitter to kind of make our tweets more popular and more interesting. So if you want to give us a bit of insight into how to use images.
Yeah. So really the best images that you want to use on Twitter, ideally, they're going to have a very basic, probably a one color background. Usually people go or some other dark color and one color. It doesn't detract from what the actual, because the center of attention needs to be the text. Let's just say you're doing like an image quote, for example. The center of attention is the text, not the background. So you don't want to have like a fancy background that's going to distract the reader from the actual center of the image. So like one color background, usually dark. The writing in the middle make sure it's in the middle. Make sure it's like not difficult to read. I see image quotes out there, and it's a great quote, but like they've used a font that is just difficult to read, and it's like, you know, it's so difficult to get eyeballs on these tweets, and if the reader can't see the text like immediately, they're probably just going to scroll through. They're not going to read it. Like it's too difficult to read. So no swirly writing, no like slanty text, no terrible font. Just big, bold, really easy to read. That is like the opposite color to the background. Like I know it sounds obvious, but I see this so frequently. It's incredible. And the biggest mistake that I see people making with images is they get size wrong. They've got dimensions wrong, and this is done so frequently. In fact, I'd say the vast majority who put images on Twitter, they get size wrong. Just to clarify, the width of the image needs to be double the height of the image, and it needs to be at minimum 440 pixels wide, and so 220 pixels high. The reason for this is that if it's any other dimension or ratio, what you'll find is that it's how the image is presented in people's feeds. So if it's like a big square image, or if it's any other like large, poorly dimensioned image, and you've got an image quote, what you'll find is that the image doesn't show properly and in people's feeds, which means that if they want to see your image, they have to click on it, and so it provides the image on screen for them, and that's an additional click that you don't want to have people make. You want to be able to present an image which they're scrolling through their stream or feed, and it doesn't need to be clicked for them to see the image, the full image, and the image quote. And right now, so many people make the mistake with this sizing is that if you do it correctly, you'll be one of the few people doing it, and actually yours will present itself much better than like 80% of the other images on Twitter, which gives you a head start straight away, gives you an advantage straight away. It means that they don't have to click on your image to see it, they have to click on everybody else's. And like this is such like a basic thing that just people just, they ain't got it, they just don't do it right. So yeah, this big advice. I'd say the best thing to do, people worry about creating images for Twitter. It's kind of like, I'm not a Photoshop expert, listen, you don't need to be a Photoshop expert nowadays. With the advent of Canva.com, go to Canva, sign up, again, it's free. Like, you can create some, they're not going to win any awards because you're not a graphic designer, right? But like, you can create some pretty cool images for free on Canva, and they'll pass. They'll certainly pass, and they'll usually what Canva do well with all the different social media platforms and things like that is they have the correct dimensions, and so it's really easy. You can literally bang out a pretty cool looking image in like 2 minutes. And once you get used to doing it, you'll knock these images over real quick.
Okay, cool. The next thing I wanted to ask you, so a lot of writers will be new to Twitter, and I mean, I guess rules kind of change depending on what you're tweeting and your own approach to things. But we were wondering, is there a golden kind of rule for how often you should be tweeting?
The answer to that question really is there's no golden rule. I'd really say if you're using Twitter as just like a hobby, then obviously not. Like, you just tweet as much as you want. It doesn't necessarily matter. But if you're serious about using Twitter as a writer for your personal brand and to promote yourself and who you are and what you're selling, then really I'd say as frequently as possible. note that the average lifetime for a tweet is 5 minutes. So you tweet it out there, it's got 5 minutes out there, and if it's 5 minutes more than that, unless it's like retweeted a whole bunch of times, really all the impressions occur within that 5 minute period. And so I'm not saying go out and tweet every 5 minutes, but like you could tweet 4 or 5 times an hour, like 100 times a day, and someone might go, "Oh, what? You're tweeting 100 times a day? Like that's way too much. Your followers are gonna hate you." Like they're really not. I very much doubt if you did tweet 100 times a day, the amount of followers that you would get as a result of this would way outnumber the number of people who unfollow you for tweeting too much.
Right.
So, like the only other thing with tweeting 100 times a day, like, having you've got it, like you can sleep and eat. So, like, you do within reason so that you don't go insane. But I will say, like a study, I should like use the a reputable study that was done by a company called Buffer, Buffer.com, which if you don't know, allows you to schedule tweets at some time in the future. It's a really cool tool. If you don't use it or if you've never heard of it, you should definitely check it out. Because scheduling, it's all about scheduling tweets. If you're putting out tweets just whenever you're online, you're doing yourself a disservice. Go to Buffer. You can sign up again. It's for free, and check it out. It's really cool. And they did a study that data showed that the optimal number of times that you can tweet a day or should tweet a day is 15. And that does sound a lot. Now look, Buffer are a major company. They've got a pretty major budget. They've probably got like a marketing manager just sitting there on Twitter all day, to be honest. So 15 times a day does sound like a lot. But really, it's okay. Like if you want to tweet 5 times a day or 3 times a day, that's fine. If you want to tweet 24 times a day, which is effectively what Writers Edit is heading towards at the moment, once an hour, that's not too much. We could double that, and people wouldn't stop following us. And what's important is that as long as you are putting out good quality information, then people won't unfollow you. If you're pumping out 100 tweets a day and it's just garbage or spam or a repetitive text, repetitive tweet over and over again, obviously people won't follow you. If you're tweeting 100 times a day and it's good quality, useful, resourceful information and tips and things that people want, help people, they will lap that up and they'll retweet, they'll share it with their friends, they'll recommend your account. You'll get tons of followers. Okay.
All right. Cool. Last question. We've spoken a lot about what you should do and kind of best practices. I thought it would be good to ask you, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see writers making on Twitter?
So I will say writers understandably are a creative bunch, and a lot of the time that doesn't work in your favor with blog titles and article titles and tweets and things like that you want to be, clickbait, let's call it, things that you want people to click on. You really want to be, unless you're like an expert at creating awesome titles, which generally, you're probably not, let's be honest. You just need to use basic language, use basic, straightforward language, straight to the point. Don't use superfluous words. Things like, J.K. Rowling talks about Harry Potter and more. And it's just cut the and more. And more, it doesn't mean anything. Just be straight to the point. I'd even say J.K. Rowling talks about Harry Potter. It's too vague. What does she actually talk about? Does she talk about her favorite characters, or what's the future for Harry Potter? Just try and be really a little bit more specific. Use basic, straight up language. Another thing I see often is like poor hashtag usage, and that is like too many hashtags. If your tweet is riddled with 7 different hashtags, like, it just looks spammy. So really, writers edit try to use like generally no more than 3 hashtags per tweet. And that is like generally, if it is 3 hashtags, it will be 1 hashtag within the message, because we've hashtagged one of the words within the message.
Yeah.
And then 2 hashtags at the end. That's generally, the AS system. That's not necessarily the correct or optimal way of doing it. You do it however you feel, it's best for you, but just don't use too many hashtags. Use tools like Hashtagify to make sure that you're using the best hashtag for the tweet that you're putting out. Don't just assume that the hashtag you've come up with in your head is the best hashtag to use. And I think a good example was one I came across, which is resource, which you sit there and you think, that seems like a pretty good hashtag. You go and check it on Hashtagify, and it's kind of like no one's searching for that hashtag.
Right.
Use something else. You know what I mean? So just make sure you're using a hashtag that is, because these hashtags take up real estate. It's like tweet real estate. You've only got 140 characters. Make the hashtags count. And on that note, don't use, it's become cool nowadays to use hashtags during conversation. But people, I went to the shop today and I bought some terrible meat. Hashtag can't believe this. And by all means do this in person. It's it's a cool thing to do, but actually don't do it on Twitter. It's really annoying because can't believe this is not a good hashtag. It's just annoying people, and you don't want to be. You want to make sure that as close to as possible as 100% of what you tweet is good quality, high awesome information. That's not to say that you shouldn't. You should also make sure that your personality comes through.
Right.
So if your personality, because you don't want people to think that you're this, straight-faced writer who's just always constantly working. Make sure that people know that there's a human being behind this. I'm not saying go out and post pictures of your dog every day and things like that, but it's, occasionally, if you've got a nice picture of your dog or a nice picture of your sunset from your writer's retreat, go ahead and post it. People will like that to see that you are a human being and you're just like anyone else. There's a human behind this Twitter profile, so that's okay. Don't be negative. Don't be negative. A writer's life is a difficult one. We don't have to tell everyone about it all the time. When you've got little wins, say, I did. I wrote X number of 100 words today, or I finished my first draft of my novel, or whatever. Tell everyone your wins. It's good. Bring people good news. Don't moan about things. Don't whinge about things. Try and be as generally as positive as you can. Just avoid the negativity. People don't like that, and it's actually one of the reasons I don't like Facebook. I go on Facebook, slightly off topic here, I go on Facebook and just my feed, I don't know about your feed, but my feed is just full of people who A, can't spell, and B, just they have so much negative, the world is so negative on Facebook, and I'm just I don't want to fill my head with this negativity. Be positive all the time, and you will find that, your world will start to look up as a result of that. So, and also, the last but certainly not least, a lot of writers do this whole hey, I've released my book, click here to buy it. And it's people are on Twitter to be entertained. You have to think about the mindset of someone on Twitter, or people are on Twitter to be entertained or to learn something, really, in general. They don't go to Twitter and they're not in the buying mindset. So if you put a buy this, click here to buy my book thing in front of them, they're probably not going to click it and buy it. They're probably, if anything, they're going to follow you or they're going to ignore you, especially if you do it all the time. And a lot of writers do this. And if you're savvy enough to be tracking your purchases, I'm not saying that not a single one of you are making any sales, but I'm saying that there are far more effective strategies out there, and a far more effective strategy out there is to have your sales page and you're selling your books, but really you want to have like a blog and helpful content on your blog, and what you need to do is you need to get people to your site. You need to try and, as best you can, grab their email address, get their email address from them when they visit your site, and then interact with them, build a relationship with them, and make them sort of get to know you, and only then try to sell something to them, because trying to cold sell from Twitter is just like so ineffective in comparison to just putting a bunch of tweets out there about how to do this or helpful, resourceful information on your site. And once they click the link to their site and think, I'm going to learn about how to do this awesome writing prompt or whatever, have a pop-up or have a thing in your sidebar or a pop-down bar or anything. There are numerous methods that you can get to get people's email addresses when they get to the site, and then build a relationship with them on a regular basis, interact with them, and sort of later down the line try and sell your book to them.
Right, okay. Cool. Well, that basically answers all of our Twitter-related questions for the moment. So thank you very much for sharing all your insights with us. And we'll put all those resources and tools that you mentioned throughout the interview. We'll put those in the notes below the video so everybody can click through.
Yeah, cool. I mean, if anyone's got any questions, you're welcome to leave a comment in, which will be underneath the post. I'm happy to answer any questions you've got or give any more sort of tidbits of advice that I might have missed out. You can email me directly. I'm Dave@writersedit.com. You're welcome to email me directly. I'm happy to answer anything that any recommendations or suggestions or concerns or questions. I'm happy to help.
Awesome, great. Well, thanks very much, Dave. We'll probably have you back on the show shortly telling us about email marketing and everything else that you know about. So thanks very much.
No problem.